Corporate greed is ruining music, and it 100% is. Like, now there's a formula to a good song, a hit song. I don't know when they start doing this. Was it recently, like 2000? They factory shit, like it's some Korean boy band. Like, the key of the song got to be this. Just that sucks. It's ass.
This chart right here shows the
fuck?
percentage of Billboard Hot 100 #1 hits.
The password share shit go around. I want to see if I count. I wanted to get me
with key changes. However, after the 90s, we see a steep decline, and by the 2010s, there are virtually no key changes in popular music whatsoever. Many attribute this lack of a key change to new genres like rap taking over popular music, or the recent prominence of the use of computers in recording. But my mind shot to something else when I saw this, and that was corporate greed. It's no secret that record labels promote generic music because they know it will sell. In fact, it's pretty well known. But I was wondering how we got here. I was wondering what changed between the 60s and 2010s that led to this generic music. Well, to understand that, we must first take a look at the origins of the music industry. The music industry technically began in the 1400s with printed sheet music, but none of that is really relevant at all because the music industry really began to pick up steam after the invention of the phonograph in the late 1800s. One of the first labels to ever sign an artist was Victor Talking Machine Company in 1904, which signed an artist for $4,000 plus 40 cents per sale. As technology advanced, many different eras of listening methods did as well. Records, cassettes, and CDs were the most popular methods for a long time, and as these devices sold more and more, record labels began to see the amount of potential in the music industry. The music industry experienced a big boom, and labels began investing a lot more money into artists. The album format began to flourish, along with the popularity of rock and roll, and it generated a lot of money for the industry.
The CD boom was from '84 to 2000. You actually had to drive
Bro,
your
if
cars
it make
to
them
the
money,
Tower
of course
Records
they're
and buy
gonna
a CD for
maximize it
$18 to get the one song you like.
until it's
And so
burnt
that was a
out.
good model. It made the industry tons and tons of cash.
As profits for record labels began to grow, they gave artists larger advances to invest and experiment more with their music. The reason that I'm bringing all of this up is to emphasize how important physical copies of music were. To get into stores and to get people to listen to your music, you needed to be with a record label, because record labels were in charge of producing and distributing the music. Of course, you could do this independently, but it was a lot harder.
Can't you get arrested for
also
that?
in charge of
That
marketing.
nigga,
For a long
DJ
time,
Drama got
record
arrested
labels
for
were
that.
extremely important, and the industry
maybe
was
he did more.
generating a ton of revenue. However, that would all change with the introduction of the internet. Not only did the internet shake up the music industry, but it shook up everyone's lives. Nowadays, almost everyone is extremely dependent on the internet, so it can be scary to think that hackers could easily access your information. That is why this video is sponsored by Surfshark. Surfshark is a
How the fuck
VPN
Surfshark
that keeps your
gonna
online
help me?
identity safe and secure.
A nigga get
by
in my
encrypting the
iCloud,
data
boy.
that you send between your device
They
and the
finna see
internet.
my
This way you
ass,
can
my
keep your
cock.
data safe from evil companies and hackers. They have a feature called
My
Clean
nipple
Web
clamp
that blocks
vids.
ads,
Like,
trackers, malware, and phishing attempts, which is extremely
sucking a
useful in
bitch
browsing
hairy
the internet
armpit.
nowadays when every single website has
like
a million
armpits.
annoying, harmful
my
pop-ups. It
kink.
also hides your IP, which protects your privacy online. Surfshark is available both on PC and mobile
VPNs are
devices,
worth it
and you
now.
can
like,
use it to
these
change
shits,
your
you can have
location
like
in
500
real time,
up, 500
allowing you to virtually
down.
travel to anywhere around the globe. One of my
Lovely.
personal favorite things
I'm
about this
on
VPN
gigs,
is
so I
changing
don't
my
know how it
location so I
work
can
on a nigga
access
with
music
two
early. Because
uploads.
personally, I hate staying up to the late hours of midnight just to listen to some music. So
And
it's
if you
nice
watch
to
a
get
lot
it a
of
little
porn,
early before everyone else. You can
some
also
shit
watch
that's
TV
illegal,
shows
like
and movies that aren't
horses,
available in your
just
region
fucking
just by
horses and
changing your
shit.
location within the
Fuck by
VPN.
dogs,
And
maybe that
unlike
shit vibe.
Netflix, you can have
Turn
your
the
one
VPN on.
Surfshark account
Me too.
across all of your devices. If you use code MattyB at checkout right now, you can get 83% off and 3 extra months for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can give it a test run right now for no risk. So make
I
sure
do
to
need
click
a
the
good
link in the
VPN.
description below and
Go
use
get
code
that.
MattyB to get Surfshark right now.
There's a lot
Anyways,
of
back
good
to the
use
video.
of
If you look at total revenue for recorded music on the RIAA's website and adjust for inflation, you will see that revenue peaked in 1999,
Oh, it
along with
peaked, so
CD
we're not
sales
even
peaking
making
that
any
same
money.
year. That's because in 1999, Sean Fanning created and released a program called Napster. As the internet was becoming more popular in the late 90s, Fanning thought the future of music would be
this the
online,
OG
so he created
stream,
a MP3 sharing service
this
called
would be
Napster
still
that
shit,
allowed
man.
users to access
It's like
MP3s
Napster,
on
what's
other
the other one
users'
called?
hard drives. And even though Napster was quickly shut down due to copyright issues,
There's
many other
another one. What is
websites
it
began
called?
to take its place. And people were
LimeWire.
able to email songs to each other with ease. Thanks to copyright laws, most of these free music sharing websites were shut down quickly, but people still wanted the ability to listen to free
I'm not an
music
old-ass
whenever
nigga, so
they
I wasn't
wanted.
on.
We didn't really factor in the consumer adoption, the
You gotta be 60
youthful
plus to be
lack
online,
of
right?
respect for copyright, and the anonymity. would combine to make it pretty unstoppable as a model.
CD sales
And I heard you were
began
getting
dropping, and the
bamboozled.
music
Like, you
industry's
download
gross
something
revenue
and
was
hope it's not
falling
porn.
rapidly. Because of this, Steve Jobs introduced the iTunes
completely
music store,
different.
allowing people to directly buy songs from the label/artist. It was really the only option that
Genius.
labels had, because otherwise people would
Genius,
continue
that's
pirating music and emailing songs back and forth. So the labels went with the iTunes store, but that didn't last too long either. Labels needed a way to make money, because from 1999 to
getting enough?
2015, total revenue within the recording industry was on a
it's
steep
never enough for
decline.
these
Previously,
niggas. They
record
wanna be
labels were
safe.
essential for distributing music to the customer, but with the age of the internet, that was no longer the case.
Like a
So
second of
record
their
labels
song,
needed a
fuck
way
your
to make
video.
themselves useful
Take
again.
everything.
Otherwise, they would be left in the dust. So in 2006, Spotify swooped in to revolutionize the music industry. Spotify was very similar to Napster and other related websites, but Spotify wanted to find a better way
Yeah,
to
these
both
two niggas who
monetize
made
and
this? Oh
legally
my
relay the
God.
music. To get Spotify off the ground, many deals had to be made with record labels to get their music onto the app. In order to license their music, labels would take a large cut of both subscription and ad revenue. And because Spotify was licensing their music from record labels, the labels essentially had control of Spotify.
does
The big
Spotify
three
make
record labels,
money?
Warner, Sony, and Universal,
they
also
get
own
paid
18% of
per pound.
Spotify, so they have a ton of power when it comes to decision making. And according to some statistics, record labels today actually control over 70% of Spotify playlists. Here's a chart that shows how
Jesus.
people listen to music, with over 50%
listen
of the
to
musical
playlists.
consumption coming from streaming services. And since labels have a lot of control
where else
over
would you
streaming
listen to? I
services,
thought it
it's
was
very
from
easy for them to
Spotify
push their
specifically.
music. On top of that, radio accounts for 16% of the musical consumption,
listen
and
to
it
the
isn't too
radio,
hard
bro.
for labels to get their songs on the radio. Technically, it's illegal for labels to pay for their
Why
music
is
to be put on the radio, but they found ways around it
Keenan
through
with-
programs
not
like On the
Keenan-
Verge or
That nigga with Lil Dicky. What's going on?
other loopholes. And if you look at the music industry's revenue,
What an
it's
odd
began to climb back up
room.
ever since 2015,
Sway.
thanks to
What
the
the
rise of these streaming services. And also, since labels were losing so much money following 1999, they started taking larger percentages of revenue shares and also introduced 360 deals, essentially allowing them to have more control
performing.
over their artists and take
Like he
more
at the
money.
zoo.
Depending on the type of contract you sign, labels can even tell you what type of music to make, the cover art to use, and the lyrics to write. That is, if
So
they
you
let
need a
you
nigga
write
to
your
read
own
your
lyrics.
contracts.
As Lupe Fiasco told us, sometimes they have teams of people ready for you to write your songs for you. It's pretty crazy. I did a whole video on it, so you should check it out after this
Defeats
one.
the
But the
purpose of
focus of this
making
video isn't the money that artists are making, it's the music itself. So even though the internet allows for more freedom than ever before, record labels were able to weasel their way back into the control room of the music industry. And I'd argue that in some senses, record labels have more control now than they did back in the day. And that's because they can promote
course they
songs
do. They
in
got
ways that
the
seem organic,
playlist. They
deceiving
can-
the
they have
listener. And
control
thanks to
over
things like
everything,
360
my nigga.
deals, record labels have much more control over the artists and the actual music. Obviously, back
They
in the
run
day, you
these-
typically
like, bro,
needed a record label
playlist.
to even be successful in the music industry, but nowadays labels have a much
They don't
more
fuck with you,
sneaky
you're
way
not
of
in there,
controlling
guess what,
what
you're
you
not gonna
hear,
be
and that's what
successful,
I'm trying to
pussy.
get at. So don't get mad at me in the comments for that statement. But what does all this mean for the music itself? How are these record labels ruining music? What does all this have to do with the chart that I showed in the beginning? Well, there is an almost direct correlation with when Napster started in 1999 and the lack of key changes in hit songs. Following the introduction of
Key
streaming
changes?
services and the control record labels gained in the early 2000s, you can see the graph begin to stagnate. And I saw a lot of debate about whether or not key change is
Does
an
he mean
indicator of good
key?
music
Like
or what
that's
this could mean for
key?
the
Or
industry.
is he
But one
like
thing is for sure,
key
and that's
as
the
in
fact that the
important?
biggest songs in the music industry are very similar. And it's not just key changes.
never mind.
Popular music has been changing
Yes, they
in many
purposely
other
do
different
this. This is why
ways.
music's
Scientists have studied
ass. So I can't listen to
464,000
mainstream
songs and found that both melodies and
For the
sounds
most
of
part.
instruments are becoming much more similar.
They
Songs are
reuse
also
the same
becoming
shit they
shorter
know
because of
works.
this, and
It's
streaming
ass,
platforms
bro.
are prioritizing those shorter songs, mainly because shorter songs are less likely to be skipped. And even if we
So
disregard the studies that I just mentioned, you don't really need one to see that the majority of popular music is painfully similar in its respective
Yes,
genres.
it's
I believe a
ass.
lot of this is due to the fact that when record labels gained back their influence after briefly losing it, they began developing technology that would make them even better at promoting generic
They even try
popular
to
music. And
create
from a business
niggas.
standpoint, it makes sense that
So
a
what they
label
try
would
to
want to
do,
put
little
out
kid,
safe
boo?
music that they know people will like. In the past 2 decades, labels have even acquired technology
kid,
that
boo.
they can use
What's
to
his name?
analyze
Jumex.
music and predict what songs will be hits. They can use services such as Hit Predictor or Shazam to see what songs will blow up. Apparently, Hit Predictor was able to predict 48 out of the top 50 radio hits in 2013. There are actually even entire companies such as Next Big Sound which are dedicated to analyzing music and finding the next big sound. Previously, executives at record labels would just make these decisions based on their gut, but now they can
Next
rely
Big
on this
Sound.
data. And you're probably thinking that if labels keep pumping out this generic music, people will eventually get tired of it. And while that may be true for some people, science says it actually isn't for the majority. In a study done by Columbia University in 2006, they showed some people music websites with a bunch of songs and told them to download their favorites. Some sites had rankings of the most popular songs and some didn't. It showed that people who saw the rankings were more likely to download the popular songs. They then did a second experiment where they did the same thing, but this time they sent out websites with the actual download statistics and then some websites with fake download statistics. The experiment proved again that believing that a song is more popular
makes them listen to it.
Made people more likely to download it. Another study done in 2011 shows that the brain produces dopamine when people hear songs that they have played and heard before. So essentially what this all means is that a label can have teams of people working on making a boring song. They can put the song onto the streaming services and manipulate it so it gets more popular. You hear it over and over again and you end up liking it, and boom, you have a chart-topping Hot 100 #1 song, and you're rich and you're famous and the label's making tons of money. And for all those reasons, this is why I believe that greedy corporations are ruining popular music. And even though popular music is super generic and it's only made for the purpose of making money, there are more talented, unique, and diverse artists out now than there ever has been before. Independent artists are actually the fastest growing group in the recording industry right now. And thanks to the internet, we can fight the tyrannical record labels by supporting small and independent artists. If we take a look at the graph I showed earlier, media platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and others make up about 36% of the different ways in which people listen to music. And these platforms are a lot less biased. The internet has created so many opportunities for artists to make a living creating their art all on their own without the help of a record label. Thanks again to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check out the link in the description and use code MattyB for a fat 83% off and 3 extra free months.
That sounds very familiar. I think a lawsuit's coming for you. You can't just use Matty B. You think we don't know about Matty B? What's his name? Is it Matty? Yes, Matty B. You're playing a dangerous game there, Matty. Your name is Matty Balls, okay? Know your place. That's the OG. That's the big triple OG. Come on. But you see them movies. All the movies the fucking same superhero. Let's see with fuck it. TV. Same garbage. Video games. What works? We're gonna do that again and again and again and again and again and then the music, like the same repetitive commercial garbage. It's ass. Some music is kind of ass. Yes, some music, and especially the mainstream shit. It's just the same shit. I'm tired of it, bro. I just want to go back to the days when I was young. Katy Perry on shit, all that time. That shit was fire. It wasn't washed. Katy Perry back in it. Oh man, take me back. Simpler days, but the good old days is gone. Money, streaming came out. Ugh. Hey, we never getting them days back. Just know that. Accept it. Don't hang yourself like I'm going to in GTA.